So, how do we decide which suppliers we want to work with? So, this is sourcing, but it also includes things like collaborating on future designs, negotiating contracts, the actual ongoing buying. So, the best case scenario is to find a supplier that you can actually form a partnership with. This would be a long term supplier that you want to engage with, not only for direct buying, but also for collaborating with future products and future designs. So, the earlier you can get suppliers involved, especially with new products that you're trying to bring to market within the next year or two, the better off you will be when you're trying to actually roll it out. And then, of course, negotiating contract terms and pricing. We can use a special type of inventory management called vendor managed inventories. This is where vendors actually manage their own inventory at a manufacturer or at a retail location. You may have seen this yourself when you've been shopping, maybe at Walmart or at a grocery store, and you see a Coca Cola employee stocking the shelf. For most people, they might not even notice, but it's not a Walmart employee or a Kroger employee. It's the Coca Cola employee, the vendor that's stocking the inventory. So, a vendor managed inventory provides several advantages. In this case, for a retailer, it means their employees don't have to do it. The Coca Cola employee will do it. But the other advantage to Coca Cola is not only would they be able to handle product placement, but they would get more real time information on things like what's selling the best, what are people looking at, what is the shelf looking like. So you get some of those details of information flow that you wouldn't otherwise have. You also want to involve your supply chain partners when you're actually fulfilling orders. So if I am making products and I am trying to sell in, let's say, a retail outlet, then of course I have to forecast my demand, but I also have to use that forecast to buy supplies, plan production, and plan logistics. I have to not only rely on that forecast, hopefully it's accurate, but I need to understand all of these components of those supply relationships and even things like making logistics decisions. I'm figuring out, do I need to own my own trucks or just hire a third party? Am I going by train or by truck or by cargo ship or some version of many of those options? And can I use strategies like cross stocking for additional efficiency? So, cross stocking is a strategy where you've got trucks coming in from a manufacturer. They go into a warehouse, but the product doesn't get stored in the warehouse. Instead, the product comes off the trucks from the manufacturers. It gets rearranged and put onto trucks that immediately go to stores, let's say Walmart or grocery store. And so the product itself doesn't get put in storage, therefore saving on those storage and holding costs. Cross-docking can certainly help reduce that. And finally, when we're looking at selecting suppliers, one common method of deciding between your various options is using a supplier scorecard. So, in a supplier scorecard, you would have to decide as a company what criteria are important to me. So, for example, in this scorecard, we have innovation as a criteria, quality as a criteria. You might also have speed. So, how fast is that supplier? Or cost. How expensive is that supplier? That would be common criteria. Within that general area, you'll have more specific criteria that you would judge that supplier on. And then you would actually rank them. So, how good is this supplier at this criteria? Finally, within your scorecard, you have to have a weight to how important that criteria is to me. So on this scorecard, it has innovation as 25%, whereas quality is only listed as 20%. So what this means, um, theoretically, right, is that innovation is slightly more important to my company than these quality criteria. But I'm not ignoring quality criteria. They're still important. They're just not as highly weighted. We would also want to make sure that our weights add up to 100%. So we would have additional criteria like speed or reliability or customer service or cost that would make up the remaining, 55% that I need for my various weights. After you've done that, you would take your weight, multiply it by the average score within that area, and you'll get a weighted rating. You would add up all of your weighted ratings to get the overall score of that supplier. So you would do this scorecard for each and every supplier option that you have available to you that makes sense for your company. And then the supplier with the highest score becomes your partner. And sometimes you might even negotiate contracts with like the top two suppliers. That way you always have a backup option as well. Something to keep in mind, of course, if you change the weights, you might change the answer. So it's really important to weight the most important criteria and the least important criteria appropriately for your company to really get the best choice.